Hello again, and thanks for joining us for another video within the InTouch Machine Edition training video series. Today we're going to cover animation details. And what does that mean? That means that we're going to understand the detailed uses of the animations available in InTouch Machine Edition. The last video I covered some of the overview ideas of animations, and in this video we're going to get into a little bit more depth in each one of those. So what are we going to cover? You're going to cover these things here, and as we get into them, I'll tell you what we're going to do here. But the first thing we're going to do is go into the command animation and get a little bit deeper into what's called the config menu. So let me pull InTouch Machine Edition in here. And in the overview video, we covered this screen, or we created this screen called Animation Overview. I'm going to still continue to work with that. I've moved some of the things out of the way here. I will move some of them out of the way and give us some more room to play with down here in the bottom of the screen. Because of the video resolution, I'm running at 1024 by 768 and need to get a little bit more real estate going here. So let's get started. I'm going to place a button on the screen and then apply a command animation on it, but it doesn't have to be a button. Command animations could be on other shapes as well, so don't think that you only can use a command animation on a button. What we're going to do is we're going to go into this button, and once we apply the command animation, now that could be done here through this button, or while we have it selected through this command animation up on the ribbon on the toolbar here, and apply the command animation, and you'll see that we have different types. We can do the built-in language, which I did in the overview. We can do VB script, and I'll get into this interface a lot more in the VB script video. But I want to also point out that here, while you have a little bit limited space, when we go into the config menu, you can actually expand that quite a bit. Here we can open a screen, close a screen, set a tag, reset a tag, and toggle a tag. Now each one of those types is available on down, on while the button is being pressed, or the object, and on up. And we can mix and match each one of those types. So for example, I can do a VB script on down, and on up change that to open screen. So I might want to execute a script, and then when I release the button, kind of mix and match that and do different things. So that is all possible. So let's go back to the on down function here, and if we take a look at this VB script, now I'm not going to write any VB script here, but I just want to point out that this interface, there's no way to kind of expand this and see more of the script, at least in this interface. To do that, what you have to do is click on this config button, and then what it does is it gives you those same set of tabs and an expandable interface. So now I can really kind of enlarge this and get more on the screen if I wanted to. In addition to more real estate here, now notice we also still do have those same types, but in addition to a larger dialog box or window here, we can get at these options. Now these options, we're going to go through each one of these and what are they. And if I was to, let's say, configure this button for, let's take that, we'll take Y value, which is that up and down slider that we created earlier. We'll take Y val, maybe multiply it by 2, give us a little bit different scenario here. Notice that this checkbox for enable focus is checked by default. Also the release checkbox, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So if I was to use this button, and when I let me go ahead and connect up to the runtime here. So I'll connect up to my remote PC. I'm connected to that, and let's see. I will say OK. I'm still connected here. Let me go ahead then and save this first, and then I will just to make sure it's downloaded, because I haven't done this since the previous video. I'll make sure of that, and then I'll go ahead and run this. And off screen, that's coming up. And what I'll do is I'll bring this on screen, go to the animation overview. You can see here that one of the first objects that I placed on the screen has got this little dotted line around it. That means that it has the focus. And if I hit the enter key, it will, I'm hitting the enter key, I'm not clicking my mouse. It's actually doing function with that button that has the focus. If I tab, you can see that the focus has gone to these different objects in the order that they were created. So now this button that I just created, if I now that's multiplying y value by 2, which 0 times 2 is still 0. So now if I take that, and now if I hit my enter key, you can see that it's doing that function. So that receives the focus. Now let's go ahead and copy this button a couple of times. Let's make this a little bit smaller. I know I didn't change the label, but the label is not what I'm trying to show here. Actually, I just did something that I would probably recommend against. I copied the button, then I resized them both. What I would probably do is have resized it first and then copied it, and that way I have an exact duplicate. So what I wanted to show here is that removing the focus, or skipping the focus, if you will. So if I then go ahead and save this and run this, when I pull this runtime back up on screen, you can see here's the focus, and I'm tab, tab, tab. Okay, so I've gotten tab to this, and if I hit tab, the focus goes here, then here. Now let's say I wanted to skip that middle button. What would I do? Let me pull this off screen, go here, double click on this, go into the configuration, and then remove the enable focus. So for whatever reason, if you wanted to skip that, and let's download this, now bring this back into view. I'm here, let's tab, tab, tab. Notice it goes to here, and then if I hit tab again, it skipped over that middle one and went there. So that's what that enable focus does. So that can help you out, especially if you need specific tab order, or want to skip some things and make them not available when you're hitting the tab. Now notice that things went in order that I placed them on the screen. By default, they go in the order that they were created, or by the ID number. But if you want to change the tab order, you can actually right click on the background or the white space of the screen and then click on tab order, and then here you can change the order. Now if things are grouped, or in this case there's symbols, you can see that there's multiple levels of those. So for example, if I wanted to go to the first object, then to the last object, and then back to the middle object, what I could do is do 17. Let's do this in this order: 1, 2, 3, then 4. So it would go in that order. Now I can double click on this and type in directly what I want to be. So I can type in a 3 there. So it's 1, 2, and then 3. Okay. So you can see how that works. Now I can turn off the tab order, and now I want to turn the focus back on in this one because I had turned that off previously. I'll turn that back on, and so now when we save this, and you know what, while I'm thinking about this, let's I don't want to see this message anymore, so let's disable this warning message in the project settings. So that's the download screen. So I don't see that anymore, because I know that's happening and I just want that to continue to happen. So I'm going to go here under Project, Preferences, Display Warning Message before downloading to the screen. So I know that I want to do that. So now when I save this screen, it won't, so let's just move something here, so that now when I save, it just automatically downloaded and it didn't prompt me about that. Okay, so now you can see my focus is here on this button, and if I hit tab, it goes there, and I hit tab again and it goes back to here. So you can see how I can change that order using the tab order there. Let's see, let's go into a button again here. Actually I have all three of those selected. Let's go into this middle button and talk more about the config menu. This force checkbox, what this does is there are several places within InTouch Machine Edition that require a tag to be triggered, or a field to be triggered. Now what that means is that the value will just change, or if the value changes of that tag, then it will do that thing. I'll give you an example. For example, here in the combo box, if I was using a data source that was, for example, a text file, and that text file changed on the hard drive, I would have to force a reload of that. And that reload, the tag has to just change. It doesn't go necessarily from 0 to 1 to force it to reload. It could go from 1 to 0, or it could go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So any change will force that, in this case, to trigger or to reload. And there are several places. For example, driver worksheets are another place that you can use the triggering mechanism. And what this does here in the command animation, when you click on force, let's take a look at the help system, because that describes it pretty well. Let's go into here into help, and if I'm off screen, sorry, let's pull this into screen here and take a look at the force tag change. There's also a script that does the same thing, and we'll talk about that in a second. Let's get into the command animation here and scroll this down. Now the force, when this option is checked, whatever tag you have in that command animation, it will act as if the value has changed, even though it may not have changed. So it will trigger events that are using that tag, for example, that combo box reload or a driver sheet, even if the new value is equal to the old value. So for example, if you have a button that's setting a value to 0 and it's always setting it to 0, well, that tag would not change, and if you use that tag in a, let's say, the combo box reload, it wouldn't cause it to change unless you have this checkbox checks called force. So then it will cause those events to happen that are working on that trigger, even though the value hasn't changed. In this case, I was writing a 0 over and over again. Also notice here that that even though the tag value doesn't actually change, the tag's timestamp is not updated either. So you can't use timestamp if the value doesn't change. You'll just be aware of that. Another thing to note is a lot of you are used to the idea of a force in PLC ladder logic. This is not really the same thing, so it's just a terminology thing. So don't consider it as forcing a value in the PLC. It's recognizing that the value changed, even though it may not have, and using it in a trigger field. So also pay attention to how it's used in some of the different scripting interfaces, and so there's some more notes down here. So be aware of that. All right, so the next checkbox here is beep, and let's see if I can beep this. I think I have my audio turned on, so it's recording my system audio at the same time. So in this, I believe I'm configuring the middle button here. Yep, the middle button to beep the PC speaker. And so now when I save this, and let's pull this in here. When I click on this button, for example, it's not beeping. When I click on this button, hopefully you can hear that. I'll double check that in the recording and see if we can't hear that. If not, trust me, it is beeping the PC speaker. Excuse me. The next thing that we want to take a look at is, let's turn off the beep here, is the release. Now the release is checked by default, just like the enable focus is. And where that comes into play is if you have a button that is, let's kind of make a momentary button out of this. So let's take a new value here. We'll call this momentary. And momentary doesn't exist. I'm going to make this a Boolean. And I'll say that here on the down, I'll make it a 1. And on, let me change this to momentary. And I'll make it a 0 on release. So what the push button functionality does, I've just kind of made in a button. It's different than the push button. I've made that functionality of kind of a momentary. So let's do this. Momentary. And I will show the value of that inside of curly brackets so we can see what's happening on the screen. And I need a little bit of space here, so let's widen that out a bit. Alright, and just so you can see that there's actually curly brackets around that. Now, if I don't have the release checkbox checked, I'll show you the behavior of this. Now this is especially needed if you're trying to jog a machine or do something that's making motion or things of that nature. If I save this, and now let's see, the value didn't come up on the screen. Let's save this again. And oh, I know what I need to do. I need to stop my project because I added a tag. Let's download it. What was happening is I was watching this off screen, and there was no tag, no value, and then I remembered that we needed to re-download since we made that tag change. Okay, so here you can see I can press, it writes a 1, I release, it writes a 0. Press 1, release 0. So what happens if you've got, let's say, a small button or a small surface area, or maybe a finger with a glove on it, and you press, but you're maybe close to the edge, and you roll your finger or move your finger off. Notice that I'm still pressing the mouse, and when I moved my cursor off of that, or drug my finger, if you will, it's stuck as a 1. Well, that's normal Windows behavior for a button. For example, if you have Outlook as email and you click on send, and you realize once you've clicked or pressed the send button, and you realize, oh, I don't want to send that email, while it's still pressed, if you drag your finger off of it, it doesn't actually send it. You have to click it and get that motion of clicking and releasing. So if I'm holding that down and I drag my finger off of it, it doesn't see the release because the release doesn't happen on the button itself. So what I'm going to do now is go back into that button and check that checkbox. Now remember, that checkbox is checked by default, and then re-download. And now what happens, it's still a 1 because I left it in that state. So if I can press and release, press and release, press and hold my mouse button, and then drag my cursor off of it, and I'm still pressing, and now I release, it saw that as a release just by moving outside of the boundaries of that object. So that's what the release does. Let's go ahead and take a look at the require confirmation. This is a feature that, depending on how you use your operator interface, you may want the operator to be actually very sure what they're doing is what they want to do. Now, because I have an on down and an on up, I'm going to get 2 of these confirmations, so just be aware of that. We'll save this. Excuse me, bring this into view, and when I press, you can see it says confirm, yes, and then it did the press. And now, oh, it's prompting me again for, do I want to do the release? Yes. So then it does the release. So normally you wouldn't have that on press and on release, but you can see how that it confirms. So that might protect you in a scenario where maybe you have a blob of grease land on the screen, and the technology of the touchscreen might trigger the button, or a giant bug banging into the screen. Hopefully they don't bounce into the same place on the screen. That would confirm it. So that's just a little bit of added protection there. The next thing that we want to take a look at is the e-signature. First of all, I'm going to turn off the confirmation here. The e-signature is really a security related feature, and I'm going to get into that more when we get into security. And what that does is if you've, let's say, logged into a screen or logged into a security level, I should say, and you just want to be sure that maybe the person who logged in didn't walk away, and now somebody says, oh, I want to try these new features that so-and-so left themselves logged in. Well, this e-signature will force a reprompt of the password. And even though I don't have the security system turned on, I can at least show this where now that I have that e-signature, and maybe somebody is logged in. Right now I'm just logged in as guest, but because that e-signature is turned on, it will prompt me for my username and password. In this case, the default user is guest, and there is no password. So when I click on OK, it does that feature, and I'm going to have to also do the same thing on the release. So once I do that, then it does the release of that. So you can get a general understanding, and we'll cover that more in the security of how the e-signature works. Now the next one that we're going to talk about is, we're going to kind of skip for a second the key only feature, because that goes hand in hand here with this key. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a key press on the keyboard activate this function. So I can type in here, let's say the letter A, and it's not case sensitive. I can type in a key, or I can pull from a list of function keys or other keys on the keyboard. And for this demo, I'm just going to use the letter A. And we could modify this with Shift A, Alt A, Control Shift Alt A. And if that wasn't enough, and for some customers it never is, we can do on this little browse button here and get, for example, the left Shift key, the right Control key, and either the left or the right Alt key. So you can really make a good distinction of what you want to do here. And I won't suggest really to use this as a backdoor mechanism to get into something, but you can see how that could certainly be used. So I'm going to not modify this with any of those. Use the letter A. And so now when I run this, save, and bring this back into view, you can see how I can click on this with my mouse. I want to make sure I turned off all those prompts and the e-signature. And now my cursor is not even on that. And if I hit the letter A on my keyboard, which I'm doing here, I'll do it a little bit. Maybe you can hear it through the microphone. Hitting the A on the keyboard, so you can see how that works. So let me move this back off the screen and talk a little bit about some additional functionality here. If we go back into config. Now, if you take a look at a lot of Microsoft Windows menus, let's get back into this, and let's say, for example, I pulled down this file menu. You can see how some of these words have underlines in them, like the letter A or the letter N, and those will work with, for example, Control or Alt, depending on what menu you're in. And if you wanted to underline a letter, let's say the A, since I have that tied to the letter A, here, if you wanted to underline that, we would go back to the text, and preceding the letter that you want to underline, you can put an ampersand, and you can see how that underlined that letter A. That doesn't functionally make it work. You would still have to do that with the key under the command animation, but you can see how that would then underline that just to get that label. If you did truly want an ampersand, then you would have to put 2 ampersands, and then it would show the ampersand and not underline it. So just for those of you who are familiar with some of the Microsoft programming tools, that will be familiar with for you. But if you wanted to show, let's say, for example, that is underlined, we can do it that way. Now, another thing that we can do is let's say you don't want the touch screen to work, or the mouse to work with a particular key or button. You can set this up for key only, and now only the key will work. And if I've done this right, if we save this and pull this back into play, I can hit the letter A on my keyboard, which I'm doing now, but when I click on it with my mouse, it doesn't actually do the command animation. So that's maybe you need a keyboard to get into some particular type of menu or whatever you want to do there, but that functionality is there. Let's see, the next thing that I wanted to talk about. Oh, while I'm here, depending on what type of computer you're using, some industrial PCs, if you notice that your most keyboards, the standard function keys go up to F12. Well, some industrial computers actually have F11 through 20, 21 through 30, so on and so forth. And while some of these definitions for these keys may work, another choice that you may have for F11, and again, this depends on the manufacturer, and consult the documentation for the manufacturer, but F10 might actually be Shift F1, and F20 might be Control and F1, and F30 might be Alt and F1. So again, depending on the manufacturer, you can see how that might come through there. So let's see, disable. This is a nice field to have. Let me go ahead and put this back to A. And this disable field, if this field evaluates to true, and this could be a constant, I could just put in a number 1 there, or I could put in a tag called disable. And this, I'll make this a Boolean. Now, if I go make a button, and let's call this disable, and just to show this, we'll put that tag underneath here so we can see it. So if it's disabled, it's on, and then we'll go into the command animation, change this to toggle tag, and I'll browse and type in the letter D up here so I can filter. There's disable. So now if I use that disable, let me make sure that I have that in there. If I go under config, disable is in there, and that can be a constant, it could be a tag, or it can be an expression or an if statement, or all kinds of things in there. Now when I run this, now I have to download because I created a new tag. So let's download that, and when I run this and bring this back on screen, go to my animation overview. Currently it's not disabled. Well, let's see. What did I do? The last thing that I did was set that up for key only, so let me take that off. Config, remove the key only, and save that. And now when I bring this, and if I click on it, okay, so it still works as a momentary. Now if I disable it, watch what happens to the button. It grays out, so that I know it's there, I know what its functionality is, but I'm clicking, and it doesn't work. So the disable grays it out, and turns it off. So you can see what happens there. Now alternatively, and I think I talked about this when we did some of the overview stuff, that we can get rid of the button, hide it altogether. And this comes into play when we start talking about the visibility and position animation. So let's take that disable feature out of here. So turn that off here. And then if I come into this button and I apply the visibility and position animation, and instead of using the horizontal and the vertical, I use this visibility field. And if I put the disable tag in here, and now what happens is when disable is true, and maybe I would change the wording of this, it shows or hides that, or makes that visible or invisible. So you have the choice of disabling the button, which is graying it out, or removing its visibility, or security will also gray it out if they're not at the right security level. So lots of capabilities there. Let's see, what's the next thing that I wanted to show here? If we go back to the command animation, and security is the next thing, and we'll talk about that when we get to security, but that'll essentially gray it out if we're not at the right security level as well. So you can see how those work, and we're going to talk a bit more about the built-in scripting language functionality in a future video, and then we'll also talk about VBScript in a future video. Open screen, we covered that a little bit in the overview video. You can put in the name of the screen in here, and if you don't want to type it, which I highly recommend, is using this to pull from the list so you don't accidentally mistype it. And you can put in a string tag inside of curly brackets in there. And setting a tag will turn it on, resetting a tag will turn it off, and toggling a tag will change it from 1 to 0 or 0 to 1. If that's an integer tag, for example, and it's set to some value, let's say 123, and you toggle the tag, it'll go to 0, and then the next time you toggle it, it'll go to 1. So it will take it from a non-zero condition to a 0, and then from 0 back to 1. So that's how that works. So that is the command, and let's see if I want to talk about anything else there. Now we're going to move into the hyperlink. And let's see. So I covered in the hyperlink in the let's see, what was it? It was this. Was it this object here? No, it was some object. We put a hyperlink on the screen, and maybe I've deleted it. But I think essentially what we did is put a rectangle instead of a button, and we applied a hyperlink animation to it. So the oh no, it was these buttons over here. So we went to wonderware.com. So here you can choose, for example, these different hyperlink types. If it's HTTP, you could do something like www.wonderware.com, and notice the disable field, so that would disable that there. And if I wanted to label this, I could put this in the caption. and just showing you that you can put animations on things that are not buttons per se. So here I'm going to go open up the default browser, and when I save that screen and I bring this onto view, you can see this will open up the default browser. In this case it's Internet Explorer, and open up that website. So you can do a little bit more than so this is trying to open up some. It's one of the first times I've run Internet Explorer on that machine. It's trying to open up some other windows. In addition to actual hyperlink or website, you can do other things with it. Let me put this on a button just to show you. Now what I can do is put that hyperlink on here, and I can open up a file. Could be a text file. Let's go ahead and create a text file. So let's say, for example, I open up Notepad and I bring into view, and I don't know what this will be. We'll call it apples, oranges, pears, fruit, grapes, and then we'll save this as, and I'll save this in my project folder. So this is the InTouch Machine Edition training. I'll just save this as fruit. I don't know why we would have fruit, but why not? And so now this will get downloaded with the project, and let me close that. And now if I want to open this file, I can do this. Now I can also choose other, and it will try to figure it out. And I could put in the path, the exact path of where that file will be. The problem with that is if you ever move your application, it might not be able to find it. So one of the things I recommend is using the feature called Get App Path, and we have to put open and close parentheses with no parameters inside, and that returns the path of where the project is. And then we need to open up fruit.txt, and let's go ahead and give that a try. Now I need to download because that fruit.txt doesn't exist on the remote runtime PC, so let me go ahead and download that. We may see it come up, we might not. And now when I press on that button, it opens up that file, and notice that it figured out the file association within that Windows PC, that the text file is associated with Notepad, and it went ahead and did that. So if you don't have a file association for that, you might need to set that up or change it as necessary, but you can see how that works. So that could be for help files, that could be for launching other things or going websites. One other thing I wanted to show about the hyperlink is it doesn't have to be on a button or a rectangle or some shape like that. It can actually be on text. So here I could put wonderware.com, and what you might often see for a link is you might be more familiar with the font being blue in color and underlined, and that kind of denotes a more common way of seeing. So here we'll do underline and we'll do blue. That denotes commonly, it looks more like a traditional link. So right now that's just a piece of text, and I would have to apply that hyperlink to it, and then go into here and then put in www.wonderware.com, and if I download that, now what you'll see is that that link looks more like a traditional link. When you click on it, it goes to wonderware.com. So just wanted to show you that. So that's a very flexible tool. The next thing that we want to get into, and let me create some more real estate here. Let me move some of these out of the way over here. Next thing we want to do is get into the bar graph animation. As I mentioned in the overview video, the bar graph, we don't have a bar graph object per se. You have to put a rectangle on and then apply the bar graph animation. So if I put this rectangle and apply the bar graph animation to it, here we're going to tie this to that vertical slider. We'll tie that to Y-val and make that go up and down. And let's say that I want this color to be green here. This should follow this when I save this. And now bring this into view. You should see that I can change this and see that value. Now I could put a scale on here and do whatever I wanted to with it. But what I wanted to show you is I want to copy this. I'm going to hold down my control key on my keyboard, copy and drag. And this first one here is vertical orientation in an upward direction. Now I can, without closing this, and I think I mentioned this in previous videos, I can keep that properties box open and just click on this, and I'm going to change this to the orientation is center, and then this one the orientation is down. And now when I save this, what we should be able to see is that the leftmost one grows up from the bottom, the rightmost one grows up from the grows down from the top, and the center one grows both up and down from the center position. So you can see how that works. Now let's copy this first one over here. And what I wanted to show you is that the orientation of the rectangle does not dictate how it grows. So for example, this one is configured to grow in a vertical direction upward, and just because I've elongated it this way doesn't mean it's going to grow left to right. If I save this and bring this back on screen, you can see how it grows or how it fills. It still does fill from the bottom. It grows upward. If I want to change that, what I would do would be to say, okay, grow in a horizontal direction. And we know that these labels don't change. This is actually left, center, and right. So if I keep this one, this will grow from the left. If I copy this down, this will grow from the center. And if I copy this one down again, this will grow from the right. So now when we do this, if we download, you can see that that's growing from left, center, and right. So you can do a lot with that that bar graph. We could stack these, do different things. So that's a question that often comes up is how do I stack or get different colors of bar graphs? Well, if I bring this one over here and apply a color animation to it, which we did in the overview, but I want to talk a bit about this. For example, if I set this limit on the Y value, and it doesn't have to be, this could be an independent tag from the level. For example, here, if we want this to go green, yellow, and then red, I might set this up at 0, 33, and 66, so it changes at those limits. So let's go ahead and give that a try to see how that works. Bring this on screen so you can see, since I'm above 66, it was red, so it's green, then yellow, then red, of those different values. But notice that the whole bar graph changes. So what do we want, or some people want, is to see the green, the yellow, and the red gradations as I step up. So how would I do that? There's several different ways to do this, but let's cover an idea here. So I'm going to copy this graph over, and I'm going to make it roughly 1/3 the size. And I might have to play with this a little bit. But here what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this green, and what I'm going to do is I don't need this color animation for this anymore. I can turn this off because I'm going to make this one green, and I'm going to make this value from 0 to 33, and that's going to go 0 to 100% within this boundary. Then I'm going to copy this and stack it on top of itself, and I'm going to make this go from 34 to 66. It'll be yellow, and then I'll raise this up here, and this section will be red from 67. Because I'm working on an integer, this will work. So 67 to 100. And now, and again, I might have to resize this just a touch. And you get the idea. When I run this, now what happens, whoops, is that stack goes from green to yellow to red. Well, maybe I don't want to show those lines in between the sections. How can I get rid of those? So let's take this off screen. Let's select all those by holding the shift key down while I click. I'm going to control and drag. Now let's do this. Let's go in, and at the rectangle level I'm going to remove the border, And notice I can keep this properties box open here and remove the border without having to open and close that. And so hopefully you can see this on screen. So I've still got that light blue background color. And what I could do is draw another rectangle around this and make that border and then no fill, so that's kind of transparent. And I'm not sure if I have this exactly drawn right because I can't see that all that well. Looks like I'm off just by a few pixels here and there. Let's give that a try. Hopefully I've got that lined up. I can't see that very well. Save. So now it's that same concept, but now it doesn't have that border in between, so that might be one way to do that. And you can do this with symbols and some math and make that very flexible. I've kind of hard coded it at 33 and 66%, so but there are ways to do that. Oh, let's see. Text data link. So we use the text data link here, and one of the things we're going to do is take the text data link, and let's say that we want to enter that Y value, and I'll put the pound signs on here. Now what we can do is depending on the format that we want to use, we can put oh, I don't have the text data link on here, so let's put that Y val and make this input enabled. And notice here that we could set a minimum and maximum for this text data link. So for example, I can go 0 to 50, let's say, and that will set up the minimum and maximum on this text data link. That's not the minimum and maximum on the tag that's set in the tags database. So let's try to run this here and see what happens when we try to go outside of the range for 0 to 50. And oh, that's also on the entry only. So for example, you can see here that as I change the value, I can go above 50. When I try to type in, and I still have the keypad turned on, but that's okay. You can see here that it shows the min and max, and that was a setting in the keypad setting. If I try to change this to a value, let's say 44, it will let me do that. If I try to change this to a value that's above or below that range, it will prompt me and say, hey, it's out of range, keep it within these values, and then I can change that. If it's within that limit. But again, notice that it's not changing the, let's see, where am I at here? Here we go. It's not changing the limits on the tag itself. It's changing the limits within that data entry of that text data link. Another thing that I wanted to show is the format. So let's say that we take this, let's do this. Let's do a whole bunch of pound signs here. And then what I'll do is I'll tie this to the Y val again. And this time, instead of making it auto or decimal, I'm going to make it binary format. And so for those of you who are familiar with binary, when we get ones and zeros that represent the place holdings for the different bit weights, you'll see where that comes through. So if I off screen here, let me just set this back down to 0 so we have a good starting point here. So the value of 0 is all bits off, and if I set a value of 1, it's that first bit on. So this is bit weight 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, so on and so forth. So if I just want the second bit to come on, I can put a 2 in there. I can put a 4 to make the third bit come on. And if I want, let's say, the first 2 bits to come on, that's the 1's place and the 2's place, so that's a 3. So let's put that in there. And so you can see how, let's say if I want a 9, that should be 1001, and so you can see how that works. So you can get the binary representation of that out. And that might be handy if you're working with bits in Word in a PLC for some status or things like that. And if I didn't show this before, I'd like to show this now, is that let me get this out of the way. The help system actually shows you, help, the tag properties, and one of the tag properties that you can get at is the bits. So here is tags properties, list of tags properties. So not only can I get at things like the value and the timestamp, but I can actually get at the individual bits. So if I wanted to see if a bit, sorry, let me get this off screen here. If a bit was turned on or off, I could use that tag property. So for example, let me just do this in the database SPY here. If I go y val minus greater than, and then B0, that would be that first bit. So that would be how you could represent that in a data display. Let's say, for example, if you wanted to use that to turn a light on or off, you could use that as well. All right, and if we, let's tie to a tag. Let's see, I don't know if I have an integer tag, I'm sorry, a real tag that I've put in the system yet. So let's take a look. Did I do temperature as a real type tag? I did temperature set point as a real. So let's take this idea here, copy this, and we'll do temperature set point. Because I don't want to type that, I'll just come into the object finder and I'll take that text and put it in here. Because that's a real, I can use this, the pound signs, and put the formatting, let's say pound sign, dot, pound sign, and now I can actually get at the decimal values of that. So now here, if I save this and bring this on screen, you can see now that I can actually get at the 123.4. I'm typing that. Sorry, that's out of range. Oh, because I copied that one, it's limiting me. So let's do this. Let's do a couple of things. Let's put this at a maximum of 999. So we'll make this 999. Hopefully you couldn't really tell, but I'm going to confess that while I was hitting the 9s on my keyboard, I hit F9, which ends the video recording. So hopefully I spliced this together okay. So we'll put this in as a maximum of 999. And now when we save this, and I think I want to turn off that keyboard so that we don't have that pop up anymore. We'll turn off the virtual keyboard, and we will download the project and run it again. And now when we type in here, let's see, did I not do that? Let's, well, for now that's good enough. Now we should be able to go in. Oh, it didn't take the min and max, so what did I do wrong here? Let's stop this and run it again. That's what I didn't do. I downloaded it, but I didn't relaunch it here. And let's come back in here, animation overview. And now when we type this, the keypad still comes up. Not sure why, but anyway, you can see that I have 999. So if I do 123.4, you can see the different format now that accepts the decimal point in there. So the next thing that I want to show is colors. So let's go back into the animation overview screen, and we've changed colors based on levels. Let me show you one additional way that if those colors aren't enough that we've had. So for example, in the past we've changed those bar graphs based on limit, but you can actually do something else here, which is based on color. So if you know the red, green, and blue decimal color value, and I'll show you how to figure that out in a minute, you can just type that number in here. So for example, if I wanted this to be orange, and I have off screen, I have the number, the decimal number that represents orange, which is this. If I then save this and run this, bring this back on screen, you can see that that's orange. Well, I can show you where this comes from. This comes from the red, the green, and the blue kind of multiplied together. And let me call up the help system here, bring this into view, and if I type in color, and we go down to the color interface here, there's the ways that we can choose colors, and if we scroll this down, we can see that we actually can name the colors, and depending on their red, the green, and the blue value, and then multiplied together, so that you can see that, for example, dark red is a value of 128, and true red is 255, or all the red turned on, all the green and the blue turned off. And then as we add those different values or multiply those together, they come up with this value. So here you can see orange is 255, 102, 0, and that's that number that I pasted in there, was that number there. We also have a function. So let's go back down into here, and we have a function that will return those or allow you to put in those individual values. It's called RGB color, and then we need 3 values from 0 to 255 that represent the red, the green, and the blue. So in this case, I'm going to put tags, red, green, and blue, and those tags don't exist yet. So when I hit enter, it's going to say, hey, do you want to make this a tag? I'll make that an integer. I'll make green an integer, and blue an integer. And now what I can do is I can create something that will allow me to change the values of those 3 tags from 0 to 255. Well, let's do this. Let's go into our project symbols, sliders. We'll grab slider. I think slider, let's say I wanted the other one. I wanted slider 4 is this way. And what we'll do is we'll set this slider up to be a value from 0 to 255, and that will be red. And notice that I don't have to close my properties. I can just drag this, change this to green, and that stays at 255, and then I'll make this one blue. And now when I run this, this will change the red, the green, and the blue values based on that. And we'll go ahead and save this, download it. And now what happens when I change these sliders? Why are my sliders sliding? Oh, because I didn't download my tags. Sorry about that. So let's stop the project. Let's download the project. Let's run it. And now when I bring it on screen, now you can see that all the colors off is black. So I can raise the red, raise the green, raise the blue, and if I try to get a value that was that same color combination for orange, which was red was at 255, green was at 102, so 128 is about in the middle, so 102 is down here somewhere, and the blue was off. So there's roughly orange, and that's how I had those numbers set up. So you can see that this will allow me to pick any color that I want to, and I've used this to try to figure out what color combinations work best for an object or for a background, let's say. So lots of different things that you can do there. Let's go ahead and get this off screen. Position. Let's talk a little bit more details about position, where let's see here. We're gonna go back to, I think we had an object here on screen that was a slider that we made. So we made this Y value that was up and down, and it increased the value but went in a negative Y direction upward, and we made that a slider. So that was, I believe, for the Y value. So let's go back in and double check that. Let's download this since I moved that, and bring this back on. Whoops, instead of reducing it, I wanted to bring it on screen here. And so now when I slide this, it slides that Y value up and down. Now let's talk a bit about making a slider and some different things. We talked about positions and rotations before. One of the things that we can do is, let's say that we wanted to make something like this slider where we have a handle, this would be the handle, and we have a scale where this goes up and down. If I know that that is going to move 100 pixels, let's say, what I can do is I can put this, I can click on this object and look in my status bar down here. That's at 530, and if I were to draw a rectangle around this, and let's push this to the back. Oops, send 2 back. That rectangle kind of lines up with that rectangle there. And if I then take this, which is at 530 now, and it could be different on yours, if I move this up to 430, that's where that goes. Just by luck, I lined that up just right. Let's say that I wanted to then maybe put a label up here and or a scale, so I want to give myself some more room. I can use this status bar down here to understand where that's going to move within that space and give myself enough space to be able to do that. So now when I download and run this, if I was to be building a slider, which we'll do when we get into the symbols, you can see that I can keep that within that boundaries, and then maybe I have a place for a label up at the top here and a scale down the side. So that's a nice technique that you can use. Also position, let's see, some other things about position that we didn't talk about the overview is you also have these slider section. If you look real close, this whole thing is bounded by this box for the slider settings. When we're doing multi-touch, we have this thing called inertia that has to be supported by your hardware, that you could like toss an object across the screen, and even though you've released it, it still continues to go, and there's different settings for how sensitive that is. This disable does not disable the position or visibility settings. This disables the slider functionality. So if maybe you had a screen where an operator didn't have the right security level, you could put that security level in here and that would disable that, or even in here. Or let's say the machine wasn't in a particular mode, let's say you could put that in here and disable that functionality of being able to change the slider. So again, that doesn't change the ability to change the position, it changes the ability for it to be a slider because that's all bounded by that same box. When we start talking about rotation, there's these reference points, and this position grows, position moves based on this reference point. But when we couple this also with a rotation, in this case I can't do this on a rectangle, so let me go into the help, and because the reference points, let's see, pull this here. There's some nice diagrams in the help when we're talking about the reference points, and let's see where are those diagrams at. So if we talk the reference, let's talk about the visibility and position. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Here's the reference points, and this works in conjunction between the resize and the rotation and how it all works. So take a look at how this reference points set up. That's a good thing to know. So resize, we can do an image resize if you need to. So do the same things, let's say with different parts of a machine. Let's say if you need to resize that, or different objects there. Rotation, let me take a look at, we did a 360-degree rotation before. Let me draw a kind of a pointer for a needle, and what I might do is just draw a triangle, and I'll fill this. This would be common, maybe a needle for a meter to be red maybe, and this thing is 110 high and 22 wide. So if I set up the rotation on this as a custom point down here in the bottom, and let's say it's 110 by 11, that'll be kind of that midway point down here. And then what I want to do is set up that tag, and we'll use that rotation tag. I think I would just call it ROT, and just to make sure, I'm going to use the browse. I'll hit the letter R on my keyboard. There it is, rotate. And that value goes from 0 to 100. But now what I want to do, instead of going 360 degrees, I want to make it point left when it's at 0. So that'll be minus 90 degrees and plus 90 degrees when it's at 100. So now you'll see it do that. So let's give this a try. And I didn't add any tags, so I should be able to change this and have it point that way. And I'm kind of off screen here a little bit, but So it points to the left. At 50% it's straight up and down, and at 100% it's to the right, so you can see how you can get that. So you can do a lot of different things with that. So there's the basics of what I wanted to cover in the detailed animations, and we'll be covering different animations as we progress through the different videos. Hopefully that gives you enough information, and let's go back in and make sure that I covered everything that I wanted to in here. Looks like I did. For more resources, feel free to go to these links, and you can always pause these videos and try them out on your own as you're doing it. Pause and restart. And thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.